The Eagles flew south to Tampa Bay, but not because of the weather, which is expected to be hot and humid today, but to beat the Buccaneers and come back to Philadelphia with a 2-0 record. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Kickoff Show presented by Axalta. I'm Chris McPherson alongside Fran Duffy as the Eagles are in Tampa to take on the Buccaneers in a battle of backup quarterbacks. Nick Foles, he has quite a history with Tampa Bay, which we'll delve into later on in the show. But for Tampa Bay, Ryan Fitzpatrick is the reigning NFC Offensive Player of the Week after a career outing against New Orleans. And Fran, I think last week proved that when all the pieces come around someone like Fitzpatrick, especially with those pass catchers, he can thrive, and that is one of the best pass-catching units in the entire NFL.
Yeah, that's why I've argued all week, whether it was on Eagles Game Plan or on the Eagle Eye in the Sky podcast, that when you look at Mike Evans, Deshaun Jackson, Adam Humphries, Chris Godwin at wide receiver, and then O.J. Howard and Cam Brate at tight end, those are the top 6 pass catchers of any group really in the National Football League. The Eagles defense, and I mean the entire defense, is up for a big test here Sunday afternoon.
All right, let's send it to Raymond James Stadium where the players are warming up, and you see number 9, Nick Foles, who needs to get the explosive plays going on offense. Just one explosive play for the entire offense. It was a run play by Corey Clement, nothing through the air. Good news, though, Fran, is that the top 2 corners for the Bucs, Vernon Hargreaves and Brent Grimes, are out for today's game.
Yeah, and that means you're going to see a lot of 2 rookies in that Tampa Bay secondary. M.J. Stewart from North Carolina, Carlton Davis from Auburn, 2 day 2 picks in this past spring's draft. The Eagles have to take advantage of the youth there in that Tampa Bay secondary.
All right, let's check out the starting lineup, beginning with the offense for the Eagles. And DeAndre Carter, number 16, he played a lot of snaps in the slot, actually started against Atlanta, so he's slated to start, but you will see a lot of Shelton Gibson and Kamar Aiken. It's going to be a rotation going on there. The one player who's not on this graphic, and technically he's not a starter, but Darren Sproles is out for today's game with the hamstring injury. How do you think that impacts the running back rotation?
Well, really, the New Orleans Saints last week showed you that you can attack this Tampa Bay defense through the air at the running back position. Alvin Kamara, obviously a little bit of a different beast at this stage in his career compared to where Darren Sproles is, but that is some of the strength that you get from Darren Sproles in the lineup, is attacking through the air. So the Eagles will miss that here today.
Certainly, I expect Corey Clement to get a lot more looks on
Yes.
third down. And we talked about DeAndre Carter already. I wouldn't be surprised to see him as the punt returner because it's going to impact special teams as well. Fran, you studied this Tampa Bay defense, and the Bucs overhauled the defensive line, bringing in Jason Pierre-Paul and former Eagles Vinnie Curry and Bo Allen. What have you seen from this new-look Bucs D-line?
You know, they're blitzing a little bit more than they did a year ago, and I think that they're still trying to kind of hit their stride. They're still not getting consistent push up front. Drew Brees was relatively comfortable. Honestly, the only sack they got last week, and that was from former Eagle Vinnie Curry, came because the right tackle was about 2 seconds late off the ball, and Vinnie just blew by him for the sack. So, you know, this defensive line, they're still trying to find their way. I still expect this Eagles offensive line to win in the trenches here today. I expect that to come back in the Eagles' favor.
All right, so let's go talk about the Eagles' defense for a moment here. Defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz said that the Bucs offense, the performance against the Saints was eye-opening, putting up 48 points. Fitzpatrick had 5 total touchdowns, 4 through the air, 1 by himself on the ground. The one thing is New Orleans didn't get any pressure on him whatsoever. Schwartz, I thought, mixed in some nicely timed blitzes against the Falcons, and I wouldn't be surprised if he dials up a few here today.
Yeah, and really it's going to come down to getting pressure on Ryan Fitzpatrick, whether it's through the blitz or through some of these guys. You just saw Fletcher Cox there. You see Michael Bennett here. This Eagles defensive line has the ability to take over any game. But in this game, I expect them to really take over. I think they should win the battle in the trenches here. I mentioned on the other side of the ball, I really expect it here. The Eagles' defensive line versus Tampa Bay's O-line, that's a matchup that should change the course of this game. I mentioned earlier that this is a full defensive effort. If they can get to Fitzpatrick up front, that's going to make things easier for guys like Jalen Mills and Ronald Darby on the back end and secondary to contain those pass catchers. And that's really why this is going to be a full team effort here to defeat this offense.
I thought Michael Bennett was very underrated.
Yes.
Last week in his debut for the Eagles. That's going to be one to watch, keeping that rotation fresh. And note that Tampa Bay's offensive line, a couple of key players like Donovan Smith at tackle, they were on the injury report this week, so they're not 100%. Let's check out the defensive lineup here for the Eagles. And one thing to note here, Fran, is that Nigel Bradham is back in the lineup at linebacker after missing Week 1 game against Atlanta due to a suspension. What do you think that he will bring to his defense now that the nickel package will have both him and Jordan Hicks on the field together?
He's going to be attacking the line of scrimmage like he's got like hands full of butcher knives. I just know that he's going to be rearing to go. You know that he's going to bring that aggressiveness and that physicality back to the field here for the Eagles linebackers, who I thought looked pretty good. We saw good things from Kamu Grugier-Hill last week, Nate Gary as well. It was great to see Jordan Hicks back in action. So I'm excited to see what this defensive front seven will look like. You bring Nigel Bradham back. It's going to be exciting to see them perform here today.
Jim Schwartz said that Ronald Darby, or not just Ronald Darby, but in the slot, it was Sidney Jones.
Yes.
Played very well in his first extensive action. It wasn't his debut, but first extensive action, first start really in this Eagles defense after pretty much missing all of his rookie season due to that Achilles injury. But speaking of these Tampa Bay wide receivers, with Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans, it's a pick your poison type deal. Even though as dominant as Mike Evans was against the Saints, it was really Deshaun Jackson who took the top off the defense with 2 explosive play touchdowns.
Yeah, and what they like to do, and this is Dirk Cutter's offense, I know he's not calling the plays anymore. Todd Monken is the play caller, but they want to attack vertically down the field, and that's why really it comes down to this defensive line. If they're going to try and drop back on 5- and 7-step drops and allow Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson to get downfield, this D-line has got to win. You mentioned Donovan Smith was on the injury report. Right guard Caleb Benenoch, who's in his 3rd year in the league.
Yep.
He's probably the weak link of that offensive line. He's going to be matched up on Fletcher Cox for most of this game, and he's going to be banged up. So those are matchups that the Eagles have to win in this football game.
Look, the Eagles allowed 5 explosive plays to the Falcons last week. That's something that they want to button up. Tampa Bay had 9 explosive plays on offense. It is very difficult to win if you're going to allow that many types of plays in the game. Player to watch for me here on the defensive side is going to be the deep safety Rodney McLeod, because you can't let Deshaun Jackson get by you. That's going to be the biggest thing with him more than anything else.
No question. You have to stay disciplined with your eyes, because Ryan Fitzpatrick did such a great job last week of manipulating the safeties down the field and really trying to make it so they didn't know where he was going with the football. He'd look right and then throw left. They've got to be able to keep him contained. Get to Ryan Fitzpatrick, make him feel uncomfortable. He's bound to throw you a couple here on defense.
Got to get the heat on Fitzpatrick. And speaking of the heat, it's expected to be 90 degrees with a humidity at around 70%, and the Bucs, taking advantage of the home field advantage, want the Eagles in the midnight green jerseys to be able to soak up that heat even more. So for a further analysis of what's going on in Tampa, as well as the key players to watch, let's bring in the insider, Dave Spadaro. Dave, how hot is it down there on the field at Raymond James Stadium?
All right, Chris, thank you very much. It is very warm here. We've got a moment of cloud cover. We've got a lot to talk about. I bring in Amy Campbell to talk about that. We've got some players to watch, and Amy, you begin.
Yeah, and for me, it's Nelson Aguilar. He's from this area. He's got his high school coach here. He has family members here. He's a guy who wants to have a big day. He feels comfortable here in this stadium. He played here in high school, and we saw against New Orleans, the Buccaneers. Man, did they have trouble in the secondary shutting down those Saints receivers? And so I think Nelson Aguilar is going to be a guy who's going to have a big day against very young cornerbacks.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And the Eagles have to get that passing game going. They did not get that passing game going last week. My key player to watch is Malcolm Jenkins. I just think he's so versatile, and he's got the ability to really cover up that back end. The big thing today for the Eagles defense is don't let Deshaun Jackson and Mike Evans and Chris Godwin get over the top of this defense. So when I look at everything, Malcolm Jenkins is so critical, tying everything together for the Eagles defense. So that is our players to watch. Now we've got some storylines here as these two 1-0 teams go to battle. Amy, you begin.
Yeah, I think you touched on it there with your Malcolm Jenkins to watch. It's the secondary for me. We saw again against New Orleans. Gosh, this Buccaneers team surprised a lot of people. 417 yards through the air. This secondary is going to have to shut down those guys who Doug Peterson compared to the pass catchers on that Atlanta offense as well. And then the defensive line, to me, this is where it's going to be won and lost. Last week, Ryan Fitzpatrick was touched 0 times. He accounted for 4 touchdowns through the air, 1 on the ground. They're going to have to make him uncomfortable, and guys like Fletcher Cox and those defensive ends, they're going to have a big game against Ryan Fitzpatrick there.
So I'm going to start on the offensive side of the ball. Amid reports that Carson Wentz is going to start next week against the Colts, Nick Foles gets the start, and he has to average many more yards per pass attempt than he did last week. 3 yards per pass attempt against the Falcons. That won't cut it. So get this passing game going. Aguilar and Zach Ertz, I think, will be critical targets here. And then On the road, I know there's a lot of Eagles fans here, but
Yes.
it's still a road game.
Yeah.
And we've seen the Eagles struggle in the past when they start slowly. So, Chris, today, the Eagles must start quickly and get up on these precocious Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Back to you in the air conditioning at the NovaCare Complex.
Don't be jealous whatsoever, Dave. Now, make sure once the game is over to check out the Eagles Live podcast featuring Dave Spadaro. They have a complete recap of everything that happened today from the Eagles and the Buccaneers. Now, one thing is I really just don't want another nail-biter. I don't want it to come down to the final play like it did last week against Atlanta, where Ronald Darby had to push Julio Jones out of bounds at the final play of the game in order to secure the Eagles' victory. Darby had a monster 2018 training camp in preseason, and he's looking forward for bigger things here as the rest of the season continues. He talks about that and a whole lot more in this one-on-one interview with Eagles Hall of Fame wide receiver Mike Quick, presented by Pond Lee Hockey.
Dub, you started out in Buffalo, second-round draft pick. 2 years later, you're traded to Philadelphia. What was that like for you?
It was different, especially being so young in my career.
Yeah.
And I wasn't used to really switching teams like that. FSU, I was there my 3 years, and when I got to Buffalo, I felt as though I was gonna be there all my years. So once the new coaching came in and then the trade happened, it was just shocking. It shocked me a lot. But once I heard it was Philly, I was like, okay, that's not that bad,
Right.
I'm closer to home, a big team, great market. So I was just I'm just gonna go out there and compete.
So you come in last year, you get injured, you miss 8 games. How was the off season preparing? After, especially you win a Super Bowl, then how was the off season getting ready for this season for you?
I told myself I wasn't gonna have, we didn't have anyway, a long off season, but I just told myself I was gonna get back into it right away. I wasn't gonna take that much time off, continuing to celebrate the Super Bowl win. I was gonna get back to grinding. So that's what I did. I took about the rest of February off, I want to say, after the Super Bowl. And then right in March, I was back training again.
You had Julio, Mohamed Sanu last week. Does it get any easier?
Nah, each week is a battle. And even if teams that don't have the, big, quote unquote, big name receivers,
Yeah.
they more than capable of doing the same thing. Them guys getting paid too. So you gotta come, that's one thing about corner, you gotta come each week locked in. Same as receiver, at one time you're not locked in, you'll make mistakes, drop passes, just anything. You gotta be locked in each week.
You've got Mike Evans, you've got Deshaun Jackson, you've got Chris Godwin. You got a bunch of receivers that can do a lot in that secondary that you're gonna face this week. How do you prepare for a game like this with so many different weapons?
The same way I've been preparing through camp, through week 1 last year. It's the same preparation.
Well, what is that preparation?
Just working your technique, practicing hard for one. You can't be lackadaisical through practice, and learning from your mistakes. You want to make the mistakes in practice so you don't in the game.
So you mentioned technique. That's interesting because I've heard your coach talk about your improvement in your technique. Tell me a little bit about that.
Technique, to me, technique all comes with confidence, to be honest. You gotta have confidence in yourself and your abilities. It's easy to be out there by yourself, staying squared in your back pedal when you're doing drills. But when you got a guy that run 4-3, 4-4 running straight at you, people tend to hurry up and try to open. But if you're just confident in your technique, just reading your cues and knowing where your help is and things like that, you'll be able to make a lot of plays.
Darby, you made the play on the final play of the game against the Atlanta Falcons. Take us through that play. Was that a stack set that you were facing?
Yeah.
Take us through that play.
It was a stack set, and at the time, I believe Sidney and Rod was working together at the time. So Rod was helping with anything going inside. So, they came out, hiked the ball, and then they did the release. And I seen him stemming, of course, stemming out towards me. And I didn't want to be extra aggressive just to try to hurry up and, run to him.
Right.
Because the way he was set up, he could have tried to whip back in. I could have got anything.
They had a switch on the release, and didn't he line up number 2?
Yeah, he was inside, and when they switched, he came out to me.
Right.
So my thing was I didn't want to be too aggressive with trying to like run like straight out to him, because I could have got a follow route, anything.
Right.
So I was just stand, like I said, technique, stand square, reading him. Then when I seen him look back, got like shoulder, like I tried to get to his shoulder, and I seen the ball, but then the ball kind of went into the lights, so I kind of lost it for a second. But like I was like, I might have just still play it. And when I see him go up, I went up with him, try to get my hand on it. And after that, I kind of see from the photos my leg was out, and I felt like that had something to do with how he was falling back. And like just went to the ground. I tried to play through the ground, found he was out of bounds, got up and celebrated.
You're going to have similar type receivers, these big guys, Mike Evans, 6'5". How do you handle guys like that?
Just gotta play aggressive. When the bigger guys, of course they're not gonna be as fast and as quick as the smaller guys.
Yeah.
But like, you just gotta play aggressive. That's the best way I could say. You gotta be aggressive, because they gonna be aggressive downfield. They like to, like shove off a lot on their routes. They like to muscle through everything. And like, we got a bigger guy, for instance, Alshon.
Mm-hmm.
Same type of guy. You just gotta play aggressive.
Great stuff there from Ron. Love the way he's attacked this offseason. And, of course, you can listen to Mike Quick on Sports Radio 94 WIP or on PhiladelphiaEagles.com during the game. And on PhiladelphiaEagles.com, we have a brand new game day experience, which we want you all to check out. Now we're going to check out Tagboard to find out what everyone's posting on social media leading up to the game. And some news here. Your sixth captain is the Mr. Homecoming man himself, wide receiver Nelson Agholor.
Great opportunity today to take advantage of some weaknesses in that Tampa Bay secondary. Bunch of catches last week for Nelson Agholor. The yardage total you'd like to see a little bit higher. I think the opportunity is there for that to happen today.
All right, up next here we have tight end Zach Ertz, all business. I expect him to bounce back in a big way after an uncharacteristic performance last week against Atlanta.
Historically, Tampa Bay has had struggles defending the tight end. Chris Conte is their primary guy in man-to-man coverage. I think Zach Ertz has the ability to win some matchups here today.
All right, so we heard from Mike Quick. How about Merrill Reese? Never gets old for him, feels the butterflies, love the energy that Merrill brings day in and day out. Now, let's round it out with some more news here, okay? Dave Spadaro reported from the sidelines that it is pretty cool, literally, of course, that they're going to have air-conditioned benches. Surprised that the road team's providing a little bit of brotherly love there.
Yeah, I could use one of those, like, in the middle of the summer at training camp. But no, that's great to have. The Eagles did have a lot of humidity during practice this week,
yes,
but nothing compared to what they're going to see today.
No, none whatsoever. So a little bit later, we're going to look at the history that Nick Foles has with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. But if you are following us on Facebook or Twitter, you need to come on over to PhiladelphiaEagles.com or the app to watch the rest of the show. We're going to give you a couple minutes to get situated.